4,000 years ago, in the middle of the night, a group of early humans sits around a campfire. Heron tells Ave to tell him a story, which she refuses. But Heron is relentless and keeps pestering her, making her snap and tell him that she's not his mother. Hearing this, Adem orders her to tell Heron a story. She says she's going to tell him about where they're going, a place where his father can find food and shelter for them, where there will be herds of animals to hunt and warm caves to live in. Odal stops her, saying Heron is a boy and needs to know about conflicts and struggle. But Ave asks him what he knows about struggle. Odal then offers to tell Heron a story. His story begins with people that move with the seasons. In summer, they arrive at their hunting ground, but their herd doesn't. Due to starvation, the people decide to return to the south. But a stubborn man among them has other plans. He decides to head west to the land of his childhood stories. He will face a test to reach the land, the journey across the sea, but the reward is promising. Vast hunting grounds, fertile valleys, and mountains filled with warm caves to live in. The elders think he is crazy and laugh at his plan. So he, along with his heir, mate, his younger brother, an advisor, and a stray, embark on the journey across the sea. They battle huge waves. The storm takes their supplies. But as all hope is lost, the sea calms, and the promised land can be seen. Finally, they make it to land. The man yells out of excitement. They have a place where they can raise their children, where the elders can find peace, their own paradise. Jer runs to hug Baya, and so does Heron. They're all very happy that they've found a place to call home. Alas, it is cursed. The earth is barren, exposed to constant wind. Adem stops Odal there and tells him to be careful. Odal tells him that he hasn't found food or shelter for them, and he doesn't know what's out there. But Adem replies that he can handle whatever's out there. Heron asks his father what awaits them ahead. Odal tells him cold, starvation, evil bloodthirsty demons stronger than his father, and that this isn't the happy place of his childhood stories. He says the land is old and dark, but Adem says he is the light. Odal gets up and tells him that the danger of bringing light to a dark place is that you might find out what lives in the darkness. He fades into the darkness around them and then pops up to scare Heron and Baya, making them laugh. Out of frustration, Adem tells them it's enough and that there are no demons. He says if they stayed where they were, they would all be deceased. But there, they have a chance of survival because of him. It's daytime. Baya picks up a root from the ground to eat, but Jer tells her not to, even though she's hungry. She jokingly says maybe they'll eat Odal, making Jer laugh a bit. Baya looks at Heron playing, and Jer says not to worry about him. She says she's not, because he'll eat first, and strays eat last. Jer reassures her that she's no longer a stray, and that he'll look after her. He calls out to Heron and tells him they're setting out. They all pack their loads and leave the campsite. They go to the top of the hill and look at the horizon. Seeing a faraway mountain, Heron asks his dad if that's where they're going. Jer says yes, and says that the foothills will be full of caves. Adem says in 3 days, they'll be safe, and all of that will belong to them. They continue their journey, walking across the vast land until nightfall, and they set up a campfire to sit around. The next day, they set out again, coming closer to the mountain. Adem and Jer leave the group to go hunting. They walk by a rocky hill and see a part of the ground stained with blood. They go to check it out and see that an animal has been assassinated there. Jer asks if it fell over the edge of the cliff, but Adem says it was forced and there's nothing left of it. He says not to tell the others, but Jer asks why. It just means there's prey. Adem says it's because they don't know what did that to the animal. They both head back to the group, back at the campsite. While Baya tries to start up a campfire, Odal goes to meet Adem and tells him that they're too exposed. But Adem says it's a good vantage point. He asks what for, and there's nothing reasonable out there. Adem tells him that this is the reason why the elders wouldn't take him south, and he took pity on him. Odal says he needs him, but Adem disagrees and tells him that Ave is better at foraging than he is. Odal says he's there in case Ave passes away, and he hasn't done anything out of pity. Baya starts up the campfire. Jer stares at her, smiling. She then smiles back before noticing that she's bleeding from her heart. Ave takes her to a nearby pond to help her wash the blood off her cloth. She tells Baya that it's a good thing for her, and that if her baby is a boy, she won't worry. But if it's a girl, she'll have to earn her place. She tries to let Baya know that she's important to Adem now and she has a purpose. Night falls, and they all lay around the campfire as Adem stands watch. But Baya is still awake, and they hear a noise of something in the darkness. Out of fear, Baya picks up a sharp knife, which she holds to sleep. The next morning, they start their journey. The valley becomes very windy and foggy, but the group pushes through. Adem walks ahead to make way for the rest. Suddenly, he hears Heron call out to him. He looks back, but can't see him or anyone else. He starts walking around, calling out to Heron, but doesn't get a reply. He can't see anything through the fog. Suddenly, Heron jumps out behind his dad, very pissed. He snaps at him, telling him not to wander off, asking him if he understands, while aggressively shaking him. The group settles down for the night, tired and hungry. They haven't eaten for days. Then Adem and Jer leave them to hunt. On their way, they see a huge forest ahead. Adem says they'll go around it. Jer asks him if he's sure. He says there's no way he's taking the group through the forest, and that they'll stay in the open. Jer tells him that it'll add days to their journey, and asks if it won't be too hard for the others. He says they'll be fine once they've eaten. Jer stares at the forest for a bit, before following Adem back to the campsite with no food. Ave starts to groan with pain and contractions. Odal tells Adem that she has to eat. Heron's playing with his staff, stabbing it into the ground and saying, "Assassinate it." With the groans of pain Ave is making, and the noise coming from Heron, Adem gets very frustrated and shouts at Heron to stop, startling everyone. Baya gets up and walks away from the campsite, and Adem tells Jer to keep watch. Baya stops where no one can see her. She takes off her pants to check if she already bled on the cloth she used. She sees that it's stained, so she tosses it away. She starts to look around into the pitch-black environment, when suddenly Adem grabs her from behind, scaring her. He calls her his girl and tells her not to stray too far from the fire. He touches her face and says it's getting cold. They have no food. Ave is tired. His baby may not survive the journey. He says he can accept that because he has Heron and her. Jer sees Heron sitting alone and goes to give him a toy to play with. Adem touches Baya's hand, pulls her closer to him, and tells her that she's for whatever he needs. All of a sudden, they hear a creature screech out of the dark. They run to the fire. Adem picks up his spear and so does Jer, ready to defend the group. They stand around the fire, looking everywhere for the creature. Suddenly it grabs Heron and runs away with him. Adem picks up a stick from the fire and tries to go and track the creature, but Jer stops him, saying they can't track him now, and to wait for sunlight. But Adem says that's his son. He tries to run, but Jer holds him back and tells him that he can't do it alone. They shouldn't split up, and if they do, his baby will lose its life. They'll all pass away. Adem goes back and lets out a loud scream. As soon as day breaks, Heron says it's time and runs off. Jer is about to follow him, but sees that Baya hasn't moved. He goes to meet her, but she says she's not going with Adem. He tells her that they have to move on. Adem keeps running in search of his son. Along the way, they see Heron's cloak on the ground, covered in some black goo-like substance. Jer asks what the substance is, and Adem says it's not blood, so that means Heron is still alive, and they keep running. Adem shouts Heron's name, desperately looking for him. Then they arrive in front of the forest. Adem starts to contemplate whether they should go into the forest or not. Jer, who already knows what he's thinking, says they can't go in, but Adem says he's in there, and runs towards it without looking back. The group follows him. As they get deeper into the forest, they all take off their cloaks, and Adem starts following the tracks of the black goo on the floor. Jer tells him it's getting dark, and asks what if he's deceased. Adem tells him then it's his fault. He told him to keep watch. Adem tells the group to keep moving, but Ave says she's tired. He then tells Baya to watch her, but Odal says no, that she's on heat. That's what attracted the creature to them. He then tells them to keep up. Baya tells Jer that Adem is going to get them assassinated, but he apologizes and runs after him. Reluctant and scared of being alone, she grabs her spear and follows them. They call out to Adem, but he doesn't listen or stop, until Ave trips and falls amidst bones and rotten flesh. They hear the creature screech very loud, and Adem tells them to run away as the creature starts to chase them from behind the trees. It starts to get dark, and they have nowhere to go. Odal asks him why they stopped, and he says they should light a fire. Odal asks why, and he tells him they need to either light a fire or pass away in the dark. Baya starts to light a fire as everywhere starts to get really dark. Adem and Jer stand on guard as they remain cautious. Darkness engulfs the forest, and finally, Baya lights the fire. The creature screeches again, this time closer to them than before, with twigs snapping and rustling sounds all around them. Fear grips all of them. Baya says they've been trapped, and Adem slaps her, making her fall to the ground. Ave tries to talk, but he covers her mouth and pushes her to the ground. Adem hears the creature's footsteps, and he throws his spear at it, but misses. He then hears it again and runs off into the darkness. He stops and looks around for a while. He hears the creature nearby but can't see it. The creature crawls in the darkness all around him, and Adem crouches with his spear, ready to butcher it. As he gets deeper into the forest, he hears the sound of the creature, and starts breathing heavily. Seconds later, the creature pounces on him, and he screams continuously, calling out to his brother Jer, who is also scared. He looks at the group for a bit before dashing into the forest to save his brother. Ave cries in fear that they're all going to pass away. Jer desperately looks for his brother. Baya holds out her blade to guard the group. A few minutes later, Jer returns, carrying his half-deceased brother on his back, with his lower jaw dangling, chest torn, and blood all over him. Adem lays on the floor, moments away from his demise. Ave gets up and says they can't save him at this point, and tells Jer to do something. Odal says he has to do it, but he tells him he can't. Meanwhile, Baya goes over to Adem laying on the floor, looks him in the eye, and stabs him in his heart, putting an end to his suffering. Adem slowly exhales and passes away. Odal says they should never have come here, and Baya suggests they should hide, but he says they can't hide because it will find them. They have to stay awake and fight like Adem. Ave falls to the ground, almost passing out. Odal assesses that if she doesn't eat, she'll meet her demise. Baya says they have something to eat now, looking at Adem's lifeless body. Ave says no, but Odal says that's what he wants. It's for his child. Jer contradicts them, saying they don't eat their own kind. They're not monsters. Baya asks if he wants to survive, and gives him a knife. He doesn't take it, so she tells him to look away. She then goes towards Adem's lifeless body and cuts a piece of his flesh. Seeing this, Jer almost throws up. Finally, after days, they all get something to eat. Everyone chews on the meat from Adem's body except Jer, who then looks at Baya eating the meat without regret. Jer mourns his brother and buries the meat he was given. He asks why doesn't it just butcher them, and Odal replies saying they trespassed, and it's punishing them. Baya says it didn't eat Adem, and Jer replies that she did. Odal says they have to appease it, but Jer tells him that they can't appease an animal. Odal claims it's a demon. Ave agrees that it's a monster. Odal claims they have to offer it something. Jer contradicts him, saying they have to hunt it down, but Baya says they can't. That Adem tried, and now he's gone. They need shelter. Jer gets up, walks to the remains of Adem's body, and picks up his spear. Day breaks, the light falling on Adem's corpse on the ground. Jer takes one last look at it, walks to Odal, and tells him to move. Odal asks to meet his demise somewhere else. He says they can't escape a demon. Ave gets up and tells Jer that she wants to leave. He says he'll lead them to the mountains, and they'll find a home. Odal says no one is going to follow him. He looks at Baya, who nods, and Ave tells him to get them out of there. Jer picks up his spear and hands it to Baya. He then looks at Odal again and tells him to move. They start to walk into the forest, trying to find a way out, with Jer leading them. He looks around, trying to find the best route. They wander the forest for a while, thinking he found a way out. Jer smiles, only to look down and see Adem's corpse on the floor. Realizing they're back where they started from, his mood changes. Jer says he can still get them out of there, but Baya tells him he can't. Odal, having enough, says he's had his chance, and now it's time to do things his way. They all look at Baya, and Odal walks up to her, saying he is wisdom. Ave carries life, and Jer is their spear, but she's a stray, and she's for whatever they need. He asks when it first appeared. It was when she started bleeding, and the creature can smell her. Ave grabs her from behind so she won't escape, and Odal quickly holds her down. Jer tries to help her, but is pushed by Ave, and he falls, hitting his head on a rock. As Baya screams at them to let her go, Odal calls out to the demon as they carry her to its nest. They place her on a tree stump, and she cries out, asking Ave why she's helping Odal. She says because he's right. Baya tells her that he's crazy, and she says she's not going to lose another baby. Then she sees the necklace on her neck made of tiny wooden babies. They hear the creature screech from a distance, and Baya uses that distraction to kick Odal to the ground. She escapes from Ave's grip, gets up from the stump, and runs away, leaving Odal and Ave in the nest. Odal and Ave hear the creature screeching, and both pick up a bone to defend themselves. Suddenly, Odal stabs Ave from the ground, and screams for the creature to take her as a sacrifice. As he stands on the stump calling out to the creature, Ave pulls his leg, making him fall from the stump and break his leg. He lets out a loud scream that Baya can hear. Odal looks up to the sky as he takes her last breath. Night falls, and the aurora lightens up the sky. The light reflects all over the forest. Baya goes back to the creature's nest and sees Ave deceased on the ground, and Odal laying there helplessly as he looks up to the sky. Baya walks away, leaving him there to meet his end. He looks at Ave's corpse and sees something drag it away. Jer finally wakes up in the middle of a foggy forest. He walks around, trying to find the rest. He gets near the creature's nest, and Baya covers his mouth, telling him not to scream as they lay on the ground. watching Odal in the nest from a distance. Odal lays on the ground helplessly as he sees the creature emerge from the fog. With a look of fear in his eyes, he takes his last breath. As Baya and Jer watch, she whistles, then stands up with a spear in her hand. She walks toward the nest. Jer gets up and does the same. Baya gets close to the creature and charges at it. She notices it has a mask on its head. She takes it off. What she sees then makes her take a few steps back. The creature gets up, and it's a human like her. Jer gets closer and sees that it's wearing the toy he gave Heron on its neck. It screams at them. Baya points her spear at it, and it starts to run. They both go after it. Jer calls Baya, but she says it'll lead them out of the forest. She keeps running after it, but sees that it has crossed a river and gotten far. She calls out to Jer, who has already stopped running. She goes to pull him, but he refuses and tells her to stop, that it's over. She then looks at the creature and sees that it has gotten really far. Jer sits alone by the river, deep in thought. Baya comes to him and says she has found the trail. Jer says it's like them, but she disagrees, stating it's not. She has seen it take Ave's body. He asks her why, and she claims it's because it's a monster. He tells her that he wants to go back, but she says there's nowhere to go back to, and that they won't survive out there. If that thing has shelter, they need to take it. He asks what if there are more, and she tells him that if there were, they would have been deceased by now. It's been trying to scare them away. He asks her why she's not scared. She looks at him and says she is scared, but she wants to live. They get up and head for the mountain. As they reach the mountain, they see that there are two entrances. Jer tells her that it's a trap, but she says they have no choice. They both split up, each taking one entrance. Baya walks into the dark cave, tightly holding her spear with both hands. As she goes deeper, the cave gets brighter, as if there's a source of light coming from the top. Jer also gently walks into the other cave. Baya keeps walking. Deep in the heart of the cave, she sees a smaller entrance, and she crawls into it. Thunder strikes, and the lightning reveals a figure creeping behind her. She hears footsteps as if she's being followed, and looks back. As she continues, another creature, like the one she saw earlier, jumps on her, using her spear to pin her to the ground. It starts to strangle her. As she struggles, the creature grabs her other hand and hits it on a rock, breaking it. She screams in pain and calls out to Jer. Jer hears her and runs to help. The creature is still trying to strangle her, but she pretends to faint. As it lets its guard down, she stabs it in the neck with her knife, gets up, and then uses her spear to stab its back and twist it. She continues to search the cave, while Jer gets to the smaller entrance, enters, and goes to meet her. Baya goes deeper into the cave to where she sees a fire. Jer gets closer to her. He sees her spear pierced through the back of a man on the floor, removes it, and delivers the final blow to butcher the man. Baya sees a pile of coats on the ground and goes closer to it. As she picks up a coat, she sees Heron hiding under it. Shakingly, he asks her where his dad is. He looks behind her and sees a woman coming towards them. Baya turns and sees the woman too. She pushes Heron behind her, but he tells her to stop. She points her knife at the woman and then throws it at her, but misses. So, she picks up a stick of fire, waving it at the woman and screaming. Jer hears her screams and runs towards her. As he arrives, he sees Heron and is dumbfounded. The woman quickly uses her weapon to strike his head, butchering him. As she continuously smashes Jer's head, Baya sets the coats on fire and runs away through a small space between the rocks that leads outside the cave. The cave starts to fill with smoke, and Heron gets outside, followed by Baya. As the woman tries to get out too, she gets stuck between the rocks by the exit. She struggles to get out, and then calls to Heron to help her. Heron rushes to help her and calls Baya too, leaving her dumbfounded. Before Heron can aid her, Baya picks up a rock and hits the woman's head, assassinating her. Heron starts to fight Baya, saying she's a monster, but Baya tells him that it's either her or them. Heron starts to hit her, but she pins him to the ground. He calls out to his dad, and Baya tells him that his father is deceased, and the rest of them too. She says those things assassinated them. He sits up and says they weren't things, they were like them. He tells Baya to tell him a story. She says her story begins with a stray looking for a home. She journeys into the land of monsters. Corrupted by fear and rage, she assassinates the monsters and takes their cave. Only then does she see how they live. They walk back into the cave, and Baya sees Ave's body. Heron says they have brought her there to honor her and her baby, how they had stolen a boy to save him, how they have cared for others. She sees how they have been threatened and afraid. She sees that they are people just like her. The stray realizes that she has found a home, and she has destroyed it. Baya goes on to bury all of them. In time, the stray and the boy learn to survive, the first of a new people. Heron asks what they would do now. But Baya looks at him and can't say anything. She goes to the cave's entrance with tears in her eyes. Ava claims they'll try again.